Hey everybody, how you doing? Hope you're well. It's 11:55, almost midnight in the east, which means it's almost 9 o'clock in the west, which I think means it's almost 5 o'clock in Hawaii. Welcome to Zenny 62 Monday night. Very important live stream about the NFL in general, and it's focused on this interesting bit of news right here. Schedule release 20 to air Thursday, May 7th, 8 p.m. NFL Network. And it reads as follows, quite interesting, that this 3 hour schedule release show on NFL Network reveals the entire schedule. All 32 NFL teams and more available on the NFL app and NFL.com. The NFL 2020 schedule, powered by AWS, will be released on NFL Network, the NFL app, and NFL.com Thursday, May 7th at 8 o'clock at night, Eastern. And it says NFL Network's coverage of it will be highlighted by Schedule Release 20 presented by Verizon on Thursday, May 7th at 8 o'clock. 3 hour show, which breaks down the upcoming 2020 NFL season, regular season schedule, division by division, analyzing the top matchups and prime time games. Ooh, it'll have insight from NFL Network hosts. Hopefully, Sil will be there, Mike Silver, Steve Mariucci, others. And it will include interviews from the homes of NFL head coaches, because they're going to do this, with respect to shelter in place, right? And then it goes on to report general managers and other guests they'll have. Full production details schedule will be issued as soon as they are available. Ooh, exciting. And it reads more too, okay? But look, what are we to make of all of this? I mean, think about it. I could read the whole doggone thing and giving you an even more detailed breakdown. I could still do it too, right? But what does it mean? I mean, what does it mean to you? I'll tell you what it means to me. It means that the NFL is bending over backward. The NFL is turning somersaults to say, hey, you know what? This for us is going to be business as usual. All right. And that we're going to be able to have this entire season and the pandemic is not going to stop us. We're going to do this Las Vegas style. We are going to say, hey, you know what? What pandemic? And what do you mean? We're going to have it with fans. We're going to be able to just go and stage this great thing, and everybody's going to be really happy with it. And I thought about that for a New York minute, and I thought, you literally did a New York minute, which is faster than the normal one. And I thought, wait a minute. Because when I think of an NFL game, the first aspect of any game that comes to mind for me is planning, specifically security. Why? Because I work for the mayor of Oakland. Those are things I had to think about when the mayor dispatched me to basically monitor the Raiders. In part, Mayor Harris wanted to make absolutely certain that the Raiders were in compliance with the master lease agreement. But there are other issues the city of Oakland was responsible for, like security, that he wanted to make sure that I at least had my ear to the ground, or at least my feet, and definitely my eyes open to inform him in case anything weird happened, large or small. So that thinking is in my DNA, if you will, right? And so it's with that thinking that I'm talking with you, because there is a reason Why a typical NFL game will play between 1,000 and 2,000 people. It's because they're needed. You got people working concessions. You got people taking your parking money, right? You got people working to make sure that the turnstiles work. You got people working in restaurants in the stadium other than concessions. You've got ushers. You've got popcorn passers. You know, the people with the huge popcorn things that say popcorn, 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 and drinks, right? You've got dancers, cheerleaders. You've got suite executives who basically manage the needs of the suite holders. A veritable city is built around a typical NFL game. And guess what, folks? The NFL does not all pay for that. In the case of the city of Oakland, something that the city of Oakland did when the Raiders were playing last year and for the last 24 years that they're not going to enjoy in Las Vegas is that the city of Oakland paid for the game, and the county of Alameda through the Joint Powers Authority paid for the game day expenses for the Raiders. That amounted to $1 million a game. The Raiders are going to be expected to pay that in Las Vegas. Are they going to have enough money to do that? Did they carve enough money to do that out of the PSL sales? I would think so. Because that would be about $8 or $9 million. But are they also going to pay for security? Because the city of Oakland also paid for security. Are they going to pay for that on behalf of Clark County and Las Vegas with the Metropolitan Police Department? Because they are already cash strapped. So who pays for this? What about the fans? If I go to StubHub right now and I search for NFL ticket, let's find out what happens if I go to StubHub, right? By concert, it says by sports, concert, and theater tickets. In fact, let's go there together, because normally one would see NFL games propped up, right? Do we see that this time? I mean, is that something that we're going to expect to see adorned on this page of StubHub? That, oh, by the way, hey, you can get your NFL tickets right here, right now on StubHub. There it is. Let's have a bigger look. Don't see the NFL, do you? Normally, StubHub will be screaming that the NFL is right here. Schedule's going to be released. Boom. Thursday, but you don't see any mention of the league here. This is shocking. And that's why I'm raising this issue. That's why I'm raising the question. Okay? This is but one of many reasons. What's the real picture here? And is there this desire to say, nothing to see here, nothing to see here? And is that courting disaster in the form of embarrassment, unexpected outcomes rather than a scenario with ready to go contingency plans on a moment's notice? I will tell you this. The NFL should have had the governor of California's green light and participation as a spokesperson before it went ahead. Because right now, it sets up a kind of a battle between Gavin Newsom and the NFL. And look, Gavin already has one victory against the 49ers when, from his idea, it wasn't really a victory, it was a loss. because he couldn't work out a deal with Jed York. It was sort of a battle of the brains. And Jed's found an escape hatch in Santa Clara. But it wasn't really an escape hatch that anybody wanted, okay? There's still bad feelings behind that. Gavin wished he hadn't handled it that way. But encapsulated in that episode is Gavin's belief, he's a friend of mine, that at times the NFL doesn't exactly take the position of local government first. Now Gavin is the governor of California and still holds that point of view. You think he's going to be silent about it? No, of course not. Of course not. Because he has what he would call and is the 5th largest economy in the world to steward. And that economy is in trouble. And where California goes, the rest of the country goes. The NFL cannot go anywhere without the rest of the country. So the NFL enters into this picture not looking good. It enters into this picture taking this idea that it's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. And we all want to root for the NFL and say, yeah, yeah, yeah. But then we turn around and we get things like already near 20% unemployment rate, which could very well reach 30% in a month. This stuff is frightening. Okay? This stuff is frightening. We have greater and greater increases of smash and grabs. We have a person being shot by 2 people at a mall in Michigan just because the security guard asked them to wear a mask. This is the society that we're in right now. How will that impact the NFL? Will there be any police there to stop people who are angry that they can't afford to go to the game from getting into the faces of those who can go to the games? These are serious issues that must be appropriately adjudicated, and they're not. This is not fantasy. This is reality, folks. This isn't a Logan's Run version of America and the world that you and I are sitting comfortably in an overstuffed chair at a movie theater like the Grand Lake in Oakland and enjoying with our popcorn and whatever beverage we happen to have. This is not that. This is real life. We have people dying in prisons. We have people dying in hospitals. We have other people who say, hey, look, you know what? There should not be a shelter in place because I want my freedom. They forget that if they go out and get their freedom, they're more likely to infect someone else or be infected and pass around this coronavirus as the coronavirus itself mutates. So what do we have? We have higher hospital costs because the hospitals are overcrowded. The hospitals would have been more overcrowded had we not had a shelter-in-place policy. And you know who that cost burden would have fallen on? The governments and you and me. Either through sales taxes or property taxes or extra taxes or just not being able to visit your hospital. Okay? These are serious issues. All of them come to bear on the NFL season coming up. For the NFL to plan to release a schedule as if everything is, as Gene Hackman would say in Crimson Tide, hunky-dory, is ridiculous. There is fun in planning for catastrophes to avoid them. There is fun in planning for large-scale events. But when you put out this idea like you're some sort of market salesperson that everything's going to be fine and nothing's going to go wrong, the minute one little thing, just one goes wrong, guess what happens? Everyone's confidence goes away. Everyone's confidence falls. Everyone's confidence says, hey, you know what? We don't believe anymore. Sure, we had all these tickets that are running around available. Let's take another look at it, a closer look at what's going on with StubHub. But the bottom line is, let's check on, let's just type, let's go here back to where we were and make this solo. and type NFL. Okay, right here and click that. All right. We have the Hall of Fame game. Only 4 tickets left at the lowest price. Okay. AT&T Stadium, 3 upcoming events. All right. Abacare. We have the Southwest Classic, which is to be determined. USC Trojans and Alabama Crimson Tide, only 3 tickets left at lowest price, $65. Signs of a bright future. But then take a look at the ticket prices. Okay. Because right here, as we click on them, we find that they're 240, 244, 248, affordable. Ticket brokers have went in and bought them. The question is, will they be able to sell them when StubHub is not of a mind to immediately refund? Perhaps they've worked something out. But then, of course, when you look at this seat arrangement that I'm about to show you, it spells the possibility that, well, maybe you see all these seats that are there, okay? Those are seats available. Maybe what about the white ones? I'm not trying to be doom and gloom, but what I am doing is giving a dose of cold, hard reality and saying, all right, where are the weaknesses here? What are we looking at? When all these NFL tickets go on sale now, this time, because remember, these were already on sale, will they sell out? That would only mean their ticket brokers ready to buy them. But will the ticket brokers be able to unload them? Okay. And someone would say, well, that's a ticket broker's problem. Is it better to go without fans? The NFL says, no, we're going to have fans in the stands. Social distancing? You know, all these are questions that have to be put out there. It would have been better to do this with the President of the United States and have President Trump, and I don't care how you feel about President Trump, I'm just talking about procedure, how things are done, okay? Commissioner Goodell should be in Washington, D.C. with governors and the president all together making the NFL's initial schedule presentation, then handing it off to the NFL network. Not this way, because this way gives me no confidence that the NFL at the end of the day can really pull this off. I want to be wrong. Okay, I want to be wrong. But somewhere along the line, the league forgot about protocol. When you're in the middle of a big issue like this is a huge issue. You don't just do it as if I got this. No, it's all hands on deck. Okay? It's the governors, it's the federal government, it's law enforcement. This is a big effort. You can't just say, I am going to have fans in the stands. Okay, what about security? All right. Who's on board with this? This is not the NFL at its best. The NFL can do better. The NFL should do better. The NFL should want to do better, and the NFL will do better. It will do better. But this way is wrong. You should have the President of the United States with the governors giving their blessing for this, which means what? They're going to have resources at the ready, which means that they're going to have resources to make it happen. As a statement, a linchpin statement regarding our desire to see the American standard of living restored as quickly as possible. That's what this should be all about. It's about more than sports. This is about our lives. Okay? This is about our lives. This is about our country. This is about the American will and the initiative to complete big projects and solve big problems. If we can't get this right, it means we've lost it. All right. That's how big this is. So the NFL should not want to do this by itself. This is something that the league should be begging the governments to be involved in. All right. Begging. Okay. Jordan Yancey says the NBA is going to continue their season. I understand that. But what is that going to look like? You had at the White House readout that I got, the last time we had any inkling of a public-private partnership regarding sports was when President Trump had his White House roundtable or series of meetings with the heads of major sports organizations. That's the last time. And he called it the Trump Great American Economic Revival Industry Group or groups. One of which had Roger Goodell and two team owners. I believe they made an adjustment, add some more. They had, here's what I received. I'm on the White House press list. This is what I received on April 15th, or post on April 15th, 2020. It came out a little earlier than that. President Donald J. Trump's Great American Economic Revival Industry Groups featured several noted corporate heads, but its sports group is dominated by the National Football League. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell is joined by Dallas Cowboys owner Jerry Jones and New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft. By contrast, the National Basketball Association you pointed to, Jordan Yancey, is represented by NBA Commissioner Adam Silver and Dallas Mavericks owner Mark Cuban. Here's the full and updated list of groups and representatives. I'm not going to read them all because they don't all deal with sports. I'm just going to jump to sports. I'm going to read who is involved. And they were as follows in this list under we have sports. NBA, Adam Silver. In fact, I'm reading this to you, but you know what? I'll rather than read it to you, I'll present this here so you can have a look at it yourself and see what I'm talking about. Boom. And then I'll come back to the ticket part. All right. And you will see this right here. And I believe you can scroll down and see, let's see here. Perhaps not. It doesn't appear to be scrolling for you, or for me rather. So let's try that another way. It's not scrolling. So tell you what, we'll remove that from the screen. I'll just read it to you. Okay. Hey, Roland Dubs, how you doing? It goes like this. In its NBA, Adam Silver. Major League Baseball, Bob Manfred. NFL, Roger Goodell. UFC, Dana White. PGA was Jay Monahan. LPGA was Mike Wan. USTA was Patrick Galbraith. MLS, was Don Garber. WWE was Vince McMahon. NASCAR, Liza Kennedy. NHL was Gary Bettman. New England Patriots, Bob Kraft. Dallas Cowboys, Jerry Jones. Dallas Mavericks, of course, Mark Cuban. WNBA, Kathy Engelbert. NWSL, Lisa Baird. And on top of all that, you had thought leader groups, and among the names was Condoleezza Rice, who is a big football fan, college football, most notably, right? So you had a number of sports-oriented heavy hitters in the room. That group should be the group that makes its presentations with the president when the leagues announce that they are restarted. In the case of the NFL, it should be the president and the commissioner, Roger Goodell, and as many of the governors of all the states possible. But you get the governor of the biggest state, you get Gavin there. If you can't make Gavin happy, you don't do it. President Trump can do it. President Trump has a great relationship with Gavin Newsom. Okay. That ought to be his first call. Calling Gavin ought to be the first call of President Trump and Roger Goodell. You should be on the horn calling my friend. I've known Gavin since 98 right now. Okay. That's what you ought to be doing. You shouldn't be going this alone. You should go have government hand in hand. If you're not doing it that way, it's going to come back to haunt you. I am telling you, it's going to come back to haunt you. So the league needs to get its act together and march in that way, not this way. This is not the right way. We're in the middle of a worldwide pandemic. You want not only all hands on deck, you want to at least give the picture that you're planning with them, because you are behind the scenes. You have to. You have to. It better be. This is not the time to make a mistake. This is the time to show that America can fix its own economy and maintain its lifestyle. That's what this is about. This is about a struggle with self to retain and regain our lifestyle whole. Not little bitty parts for some people, but as it was a year ago. We have the ability to do that. We're not doing it. I can't emphasize enough the importance of having the participation monetarily of law enforcement at a time when, let's say if there's 40% unemployment, God forbid we get to a point where basically every other person is without a job. And our underemployment rate is at 70%. But folks, right now, we are headed toward that. We have businesses, large and small, closing, declaring bankruptcies. And we don't have any sure sign, other than the occasional check or our ability to manage our own private Idahos, that this is going to change. And some of us have to reach worldwide for assistance because we have the means to do so, but not everybody does. So the National Football League cannot base its future on such uncertainties. It has to be about making everyone's future certain as much as it possibly can by engaging government. That is what is at stake here. Nothing less. This isn't about Las Vegas or Los Angeles or Washington. It's not about new stadiums. It's not about relocation. No. All of those issues that you're familiar with are all part of an American's lifestyle we lived, where we are comfortable enough to have these issues, comfortable enough to be worried about lawsuits. We're not there, okay? Dean White says he hopes the NFL season is canceled. Think about that, what Mr. White just posted here in the comment section. What does that say? And Dean, why do you say that? I just want to read your comment. Why do you say that? I believe and want to see the NFL season go for one reason. It means the maintenance of our standard of living. If it's done the way that I'm talking about, and it's not show. Because if it's show, if NFL is doing something it really can't afford to do, If it's issuing tickets that people can't really afford to buy, then there's a problem. There is a way this can be done. And it's a way that should ensure that people who normally work the games are employed. The NFL should take its work, take its approach, take its very job with the idea that this is to help get people back to work. Not so much fans in the stands, that's part of it, but putting America to work and restoring the American standard of living. This is about our country's future. Sprechen Sie English? This is about our country's future. This isn't about whether or not Tom Brady is going to play the Oakland Raiders or the Las Vegas Raiders or the Mars Raiders or the Cucamonga Raiders or the Hawaiian Raiders or the Tokyo Raiders. This is about the American standard of living and the maintenance of it. Because maintaining that American standard of living means a cessation of the homeless problem. It means a better balanced income system. It means well-financed healthcare, police, government services. It means a restored airline system, which would bring up the other issue. What are you going to do about the idea that people might want to travel to see the games and maybe there aren't enough flights? Do you have an agreement with the airlines that you're going to be able to finance enough flights to take place to get people to and fro? Did you all at the NFL think that through? These are things that normally you would not have to think about. But I'm telling you right now, this is in your lap. You don't have the brain power to figure it out? You call me. I do. This is serious. And I mean it. We got to get it together as a society. And we're not doing that. Let me read your comments. Dean White says, I shouldn't say hope, but it's more likely I don't really care. The other sports I hope come back. The workers at football stadiums is who I care about. Understood. Dean White says, the workers at football stadiums is who I care about. You repeated that twice. I think that was a glitch. And that's what I care about too, the workers. Their safety. My assumption is the NFL's got the safety issue worked out. I'm talking about the economics now, which comes back to money, right? Which also helps safety. Roland Dub says, I've been very fortunate. I've never been busier with work. I'm busy too. Ditto. We're not everybody though. And see, that's what, Roland Dubs, I have to say that's what bothers me about this whole thing is that hey, Juan Ramirez, how you doing? I don't want to cry, but it bothers me that we have a large number of people who are suffering. And hey, here to help me out with this is Zenny 62 Media vlogger and colleague Joseph Amanduras. Hey man, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Great to have you here. And great to have you here. What do you think about all this?
Maybe you could catch me up. I didn't hear the last thing you mentioned.
Oh, I was talking about, first of all, Roland Dub said that he was very fortunate. He had never been busier at work. And I was saying that what makes me want to cry is this number of people who are suffering out there right now. And there's no guarantee that they're going to be back to work by when the NFL tickets go on sale or afford them. And what's going on is, ticket brokers are out there buying them up when they can. The prices reflect that because they're not that high. That's a good thing. But will they be able to unload them? Because the unemployment rate is high and it's only going to get worse. The money to deal with the pandemic, which I calculated should be a total of 9 trillion 800 billion, 9 trillion 800 billion divided thusly just over 5 trillion for households, another 1.8 trillion for small businesses, and then 3 trillion in block grants for large businesses like the airlines and then governments. That amount, we're not even close to that. Gary Cohn, who is President Trump's quite able chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors and former and Goldman Sachs executive, said something that bothered me. He said, and nothing against Gary, I've always admired his work. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting the man yet. My point is this. He said that by his estimation, the world would only allow us to put about 5 trillion into our own economy, and then it wouldn't buy our treasury, but it would stop, okay? Because the interest rates would go up. Mm-hmm. My thought was, wait a minute. It's enact price controls and as much as we can push down those rates and give ourselves a fighting chance. To me, we're on a World War II footing, and that is we borrowed a lot during the war, but in order to avoid price inflation, we had price controls. John Kenneth Galbraith, famed Harvard economist, an intellectual hero of mine, had the pleasure actually of talking with his wife for about so long, some time ago, talked about how economic planning was done then. What bothers me, Joseph, is that we don't talk about economic planning. We haven't. And the reason is that we haven't structured ourselves mentally to do economic planning. I've been trained to do economic planning since I was 17 years old.
Well, and I think part of that has to do with the dumbing down of our society, as you pointed out earlier in different broadcasts, is that they don't teach civics. Now they're not teaching handwriting. And so they're not even teaching basic decorum, how to interact and respect others in schools.
Yep.
So everything has a domino effect. And maybe you can enlighten me if I'm wrong, but I think it was, like you mentioned, it was FDR who implemented price control when it comes to the basic like milk, eggs, and bread. Now, I don't know personally if prior to this time.
And that's when Galbraith worked as the administrator for war price controls, if memory second. I always looked it up online, but keep talking while I do look that up just for.
So what I was going to mention was I don't know that I know in our society now we don't have tax on food. I don't know if that's always existed or was that the outcome of World War II. But we got to start paying more attention with regards to how we price produce, how we price essential goods, and what do we do or do not tax. I do understand the need for tax because we have to generate, at least the government has to generate income somehow. Mm-hmm. But again, like you said, there's no planning. And in this current administration, you're not going to have any planning. What you have currently, in my belief, is that you have a TV president that enjoys sound bites and likes to throw things out there and see if they stick. If it sounds good, he'll take credit for it. If he doesn't, he'll blame it on somebody else.
But see, even with that, there are people, reasonable people, Bob Kraft, Roger Goodell, Jerry Jones, I can go on and on and on, people within his own administration that can talk to him in their fashion and get him to act. I don't put it all on President Trump. I understand he hasn't handled this situation well at all. I 1 billion% agree with you, but we don't have the luxury, okay, of saying, oh well, or oh gee, it would be nice. We have to make this situation ourselves, or we are going to lose our country. That's how serious this is. We can't afford to say, hey, maybe the next president will get it right, because the clock is ticking. We have to make this president get it right, regardless of how we feel about him.
No, I totally
And the
agree.
league has to do that. His supporters have to do it. Stephen Ross has to do that. All of these people who are transactionalists in politics, as opposed to activists, the transactionalists who run businesses have to do that. They have to become transactionalists again. Because if they don't, it's not for them to say, oh, well, that's going to be on everybody else. I'm okay. And that's what bothers me. You have a lot of people saying, well, I'm okay. Yeah, well, you're not okay if the person next to you is not okay. And that's the society we're setting up.
Well, and
we're setting up.
And you hit it right on the nail on the head, because that same attitude is prevalent in the coronavirus situation. Because you have, even today, I had to get some medicine, but it was delivered to me. But I stayed in one place in the vehicle, right? My windows up. But coming back, you see people walking around like nothing. It's a pleasant sunny day. They're in groups. They're walking around without face masks. They're bicycling. They're running. They're jogging. And that's the attitude. I'm okay, so forget about everybody else. But this is the problem. How do they know they're okay? And potentially they're affecting other people.
That's right. That's right. And I don't know if you heard about the situation in Michigan where the security guard was killed, black, by persons at the shopping center, also black, just because he asked them to wear their mask. So, given the way the society is forming, how are people going to react? Are they going to allow us to go to NFL games? Or are they going to say, hey, look, you know what? We don't have anything. You shouldn't go to the games either. And next thing you know, you've got some sort of riot or war on your hands at these stadiums. And the league needs to plan for that. And you would say, how? One big thing is to take a good set of tickets and say you're going to give out 2,000 tickets to the community, to community food banks, to people who ordinarily would not be able to go to these games, right? So they can enjoy them. The NFL has to entirely change its ticketing model to deal with the politics, the very sensitive politics of this situation. You were going to say.
As you're saying that, I had a thought as well, because one of the things that potentially could happen, because this is a society that we live in, is that how do we know those food banks, right? And I'm playing devil's advocate. I don't disagree with you at all, but I'm just playing devil's advocate for the sake of this conversation. How do we know those food banks don't have an element, because humans are humans, people are people, and there's always going to be a certain element of the community that want to take advantage of that. It may hoard those tickets and give it out to the highest bidder.
Well,
potentially, but potentially maybe another option would be that recipients.
I'll deal with that, because this is what happens in a social media environment. People in organizations that do that get immediately called out, and so the system is better at policing itself. That's why I believe that the NFL, the federal government should have simply dropped assistance money into the accounts of people rather than having people fill out paperwork. There are a number of people that counsel on how to properly fill out their paperwork to work with the government. They give up. They believe the government's not going to work for them because the government has made it complicated when it didn't need to do so. Okay? My point is that if you trust the society to work for itself, but realize that the overarching need is to get resources to people, get money to people, and restore our lifestyle, all that other stuff goes away. If someone's going to try to cheat or whatever, you can't planning at all. It'll screw you up.
Right.
You have to be comfortable with a certain level of imperfection in working. And I would add that the kind of imperfection you're talking about is actually kind of desirable. It'll work itself out. My concern is not having a have versus have not situation. All right. That's my concern. Not having a have versus have not situation. You know, giving some to law enforcement. There's so many people around who don't have anything. They'll just be happy to get the ticket. Because there's so many people around who have less money, because there's less money churning in the economy, that kind of scalping, it's not going to be a lot anyway. If somebody needs that, wants the ticket, and they want to trade it for something else because they have a need, great. If it gives a person who's very poor some means to obtain what they need to obtain, and then somebody else is able to go to the game, then you know what we have? We have one person who's less likely to riot and the other person who wants to go to the game. That's a pretty beautiful system, right?
Yeah, if it all plays out that way, yes.
Yeah, you know. So I mean, as I think about it, okay, there's a good imperfection, right? There's a good imperfection. We want to minimize the imperfection by giving them the people who, you know, would want to go. But that's a good imperfection.
So you may have covered this earlier because I just logged on now. As you know, and it's been said by our other vloggers, Vinny, and I'm sure yourself with this video, that this week the schedule comes out. Right. Now, Governor Newsom has stated here in California that he doesn't expect sports to resume until next year. So nothing for 2020. Mm-hmm. So the dilemma I even had with my fellow Raider Booster Club members was, okay, so that presents us with a potential dilemma. What happens with the California teams? Are they supposed to play in the rest of the NFL in a neutral area?
Before you arrived, you didn't hear me say this. Were you able to hear my broadcast backstage by chance?
I was earlier, but I'm okay now. When I was backstage, I had just got backstage, so you were in the middle of a conversation.
Were you able to hear?
No.
Oh, there was no sound at all?
No, I was, but I was only.
That's all. Okay, I'm just asking for a technical reason, not about whether or not you heard.
No, I was able to hear for like 10 seconds prior to picking up.
That's fine. That's fine. That means it worked. I had another reason for asking that.
Okay.
Now, my point is that prior to your arrival in general, what I had said was the NFL, in announcing its schedule, should come out with the President of the United States and the governors, but no governor is more important on that list than California Governor Gavin Newsom. And they should have Newsom at the podium with them to give the nation comfort that this is truly a national plan and an effort to restore our lifestyle, and that there's going to be a national effort to get this right as a way of getting us on the proper gantry to relaunch our economy back to the way it was last year, at least. That's why I said that, because Gavin has said he doesn't see that happening until, the year after. And I know what Gavin's thinking. Okay. Gavin does not want to be seen as the person cheerleading something for the rich. All right. That's how he thinks. So he's saying, hey, wait a minute. I'm facing a $35 billion deficit. I've got underfunded healthcare. I've got overcrowded hospitals. I've got all these problems, and I'm going to deal with sports. But the way to appease him, the way to get him on board is to say, Governor, we understand it. We want you as part of this plan for this year so that we can go about restoring the American standard of living. But we want to do this in a way where people who would normally be less likely to participate in this are. That will get Gavin to listen at least, and then give him the opportunity, to help, and his staff to help form the plan, along with Steve Sisolak, governor of Nevada, who's in a pickle, politically, and the other governors of the Western states, and then of course New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. If you have those folks involved, all right, you will be able to really sail. And then, let's round out the picture. Get because someone would say, well, you just mentioned the blue staters. Yeah. Brian Kemp, governor of Georgia, governor of Florida. Make sure that all these governors are at the table and planning together with the objective of filling holes. Hey, look, where are deficiencies in terms of hosting these games? What are the problems that might happen? How are we going to be regarded politically? How do we mitigate that? Okay. Because the NFL, whether it likes it or not, is going to impact the political fortunes of all of these folks. You can't just say, well, it's an election year, I don't care. This is different. This is a pandemic. And we can have all kinds of crazy things happening because of this election. We can't afford that to do things business as usual. What bothers me about this entire approach is the NFL right now, and the NFL Network and everybody else is acting like, oh, this is just business as usual. This is not business as usual by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, and what's happening is there's a sense of complacency.
Right.
And unfortunately, that's going to increase, I believe, rather than coming back to how we are now. I think as the summer longs move ahead, without any treatment or cures, you're going to see a second wave occur because people have this innate need or desire to go out and take part in spring and summer events. And people are just that, I don't want to say ignorant, but there's something in a certain group of population that doesn't want to deal with this and will go out of their way to pretend it doesn't exist.
Yeah, I think that what's going on, before I say anything, I want to get to the comments because I want to be
Okay.
fair to our friends. I started with Roland Dubs. He said, I've been very fortunate and never been busier with work. Juan Ramirez says, an evening family. Then he follows up with, I hope and pray everyone is well. Dean Willie says, I'm a mailman and there are so many parcels. Roland Dubs says, I pray for all who suffer through this. Juan Ramirez adds, it's heartbreaking to see the anxiety of folks without an income due to loss of employment. I'll add to that. It's hard just to see the anxiety. I've been able to make my mom happy. Okay. I've made all the right moves for, and my mom is happy and I've been able to help her with a lot of stuff. Okay. I've been able to help a lot of people because I believe in making government work. All right. I grew up that way. I grew up in planning. That's what I'm used to doing. All right. But he is right. Juan Ramirez. It's heartbreaking to see my mom watch television, CNN in particular. I'm not saying anything bad about CNN, but CNN is reality TV. It tells what's happening, and you see a lot of people suffering, and then she hurts by that. I try to get her to watch something funny. Sometimes she does that, but she's not the only one. This society is producing anxiety at an unprecedented level. No question about it. No question about it. And we have to take steps to rebuild our country before it sinks. We can't say, oh, let it get there, right? We have to be all hands on deck right now. And what I was saying again, and said it before, and I'll say it again. We don't have the luxury of waiting for the next president. We got to do this now because of the rate of decline of our economy. That's what's concerning me. And the economy is us. I don't know if anybody has realized that, but hey, you want any example that the economy that is not these numbers and equations, but it really is an institutional function, which is why I've been an institutionalist since I was 17 years old, is because look what happened when we told people to stay at home. Look, the economy is us. Okay. Which means we can fix this. But if we don't have the mind to fix it, it doesn't get fixed. Roland Dubs says only essential workers can go to the first game free of charge. I like that idea. What do you think of that idea, Joseph?
Yeah, I think that's essential workers, people like veterans, the medical field. again, what I hope, even the essential workers are getting screened, and maybe you talked about this. Um, for example, since we're talking about sports, the Korean Baseball League is going to start, I think, later this week or next week. And what they're doing, which first of all, I disagree that they're opening that soon. But one of the things that they're implementing is a screening process for each player. They're signing waivers, they're screening them. Each player that goes into the facility is getting screened, and they're checking their temperature. I think something like that has to be implemented if we're going to allow people to go into these stadiums and essentially be around other individuals. I think you have to do that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Oh, and then we have Mike Johnson, who I think is new here. He says CNN. Mike Johnson is actually somebody else. Whatever. CNN is reality TV only if you live in fantasy land. Okay. Then he says you can't prove COVID is even real. I would say more of a rebrand of the flu. It's called social engineering. You're an MK Ultra victim. Mike, all I can say is this: I still hope you don't get sick because, well, I mean, think about how. Oh, this is how gauche that kind of thinking is. He says you can't prove that COVID is even real. I would say it's more of a rebrand. If the flu. In other words, he's acknowledging that you can get sick by it, right? He wrote that. I mean, this is the pure anti-intellectualism at work, the non-thinking. Think about. I'm taking his own. I'm deconstructing his own statement. All right. This is beautiful stuff.
And you know what? The one thing I would tell him is that go to those families whose family members have died, and you tell them to their face that it's fake.
But here's the thing, Joseph, you don't even have to do that. Listen to he contradicted himself. It's like he's got one version talking to the other in the mirror like this, and they're staring at each other and they're at war because he says this. First, he says, you can't prove that COVID is even real, right? In the sentence, okay? But then he turns around and says, ... I would say more of a rebrand if the flu, which means what? It means it's real, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? He wrote that in one paragraph.
Well, and that's the same sentiment.
Hold on a second. His brain's not even turned on. Okay? His brain isn't even turned on. He says, you can't prove that COVID is even real. Then he proves that it's real. This is the kind of stuff that's kind of like, yeah, okay. And then he says, why were healthcare workers being laid off all over the world? The ones aren't even making videos for social media in empty facilities. What? Then he says, Juan Ramirez comes back with sanity and says, even the constant discussion of threat of a second wave of this virus is terrifying for the fact that people will struggle with severe post-traumatic stress syndrome symptom due to loss of jobs, deaths, restrictions of freedom. And then the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 statements are by Mike Johnson, who says, by the flu, which he now admits exists when he said it didn't exist, right? Not some brand new virus, but then he calls it a virus. Then he says his wife is a doctor. Okay. And then he says, which probably means he doesn't listen to his wife. Hey, you know what? Happy wife, happy life. You might want to start listening to your wife. Then he says, the flu, it's killed hundreds of thousands of people every year. Okay, so you admit that it kills people. And it's not a novel virus. He says, plug into social media, you'll see all the videos. The flu is not COVID, fact. And then he says, she's saying this, not me, buddy. Mike Johnson, make your own videos. All right, so that's the kind of stuff. It's kind of like you have people who come on and they don't make sense, right, with their own statements. He tells us it's not real, but then he acknowledges that it is real, even if he's wrong in saying that it's a kind of flu. He still acknowledges that it's real. So here's the thing, Mike. Don't do things stupid. Don't wear your mask out, social distance, don't get sick, and by all means, keep your immune system up. Keep yourself alive so we can have these ridiculous arguments. Joseph.
Well, there's two things. One of them, and I'll go back, but the initial thought that I had, especially when Roland Dubs had chimed in about the anxiety, if you think about what's going on and how unprepared we have been, we're creating mental illness with the segment of our population, because these PTSD issues, anxiety is going to translate into something greater and deeper, and we're creating a mental health crisis on top of everything else. The second
That's
thing,
absolutely correct.
and the second thing, is Mike was trying to play both sides, is that you and I spoke to Jessica yesterday, and one of the crazy things about this whole the virus isn't real thing is that the protesters in Orange County, California, and the beaches, majority of them politicized this protest and made it about the Trumpers, and you have Trumpers waving signs that says the virus is fake and having Trump's logos all over that sign, but yet those same people are wearing hazmat suits, masks, and gloves. So if the virus is fake, why are you protecting yourself?
Right. It's the same deal that we experienced with Mike Johnson. He was contradicting himself in one paragraph. The first paragraph says one thing. The first sentence of the paragraph, says, "Oh, first of all, it doesn't exist." And then the very next sentence in the same paragraph says that it does. And so he gets mad, and everything that he's saying is based on emotion. And he wants to press it rather than, see, if he really believed in what he was saying, there would be more of a calm, there would be more of an expression of sympathy for others. But there's none of that. It's only about pressing his idea. That's it. Wow. Juan Ramirez says health is wealth. Hey, by the way, how's LA doing through all this?
Well, I think Mayor Garcetti, along with Governor Newsom and local city mayors, in other words, like mayors from the city of Long Beach, big sub-cities in the county in general, have worked effectively and collectively together. I think that's one of the great things, as you know, as a California resident yourself, even though you're in Georgia right now, is that California is really good in times of crisis. We pull together for whatever reason, and I think the city of yes, because you remember during the World Series on that big earthquake, you had Southern California rush to Northern California, and there was this great compassion, but there's also great workmanship between each other.
Yeah,
different sides of the state.
Because of earthquakes, I remember. I'll tell you exactly where I was when the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake hit. I was walking down Bancroft in Berkeley, past Zellerbach, headed to BART. I was going to get off at 19th, go over to Adams Point, where I live in Oakland, to the Golden Bear to meet my client, John Sharon of Stoops Sharon and Harburg. I did a market study for him, and for a farmer's market he was going to build in Oakland for $4 million. And as I'm walking down, all of a sudden I looked up and I quite literally saw the pavement roll in front of me, toward me. I mean, I will, obviously, by the fact that I'm telling you this, never forget that in my entire life. And it went by like that, right? It was like, and it kept shaking. And there was a fellow that was walking, as people do, in the opposite direction, going uphill. I'm going downhill. And he says, "Earthquake." And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Earthquake." And I said, "Yeah." So that was an earthquake. I said, "Do you feel it?" He goes, "Yeah, earthquake." And it took us a full 5 minutes to realize that the other didn't speak the language of the other person. He spoke Spanish, I spoke English, but we were trying to connect, right? And then BART had shut down. The downtown Berkeley station was closed. The whole system was shut off for about, as it happened, 4 hours, which is standard for BART. They do system checks. And so I got the 51 bus on Durant. It was crowded because the earthquake had happened at 5:04. The bus I caught at about was like 10 after 6, so when it came up one somewhere in there. Um, and this lady, blind, was sitting toward the front and had this, and she was had this cane, and she was her listening to the radio, and she says, "Oh my God, the Bay Bridge is collapsed." And I'm thinking the whole bridge, right? I'm thinking like, whoop. And she's just giving this rundown. And I finally got there, and people that you normally would not, I mean, because everybody has their friend groups, right? The
Mm-hmm.
people that you normally would not connect with, I connected with everybody that night. I went home with somebody that I never thought I'd go home with in my entire life. That I always wanted to, right? And uh, that's how these things roll. Earthquakes in California are so frequent and at times powerful that I think we have a default to want to help each other. So I think you're right.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's effective, at least with the local, well, the city and the mayor of Los Angeles, Garcetti, and the governor, is that they're frequent news conferences to the public. Let them know every single detail they could possibly know, to the point where sometimes you just want to change the channel because it's an overwhelming amount of information. But I'd rather have that than have no information. So
Right.
I think that's the brilliant thing that our local city mayor has done. One of the other things that he pointed out, because we all see, if any of us have a television, that other states want to open early and there's business as usual for some cities and some states. And he's pointing out we're not like every other city. There's a greater population, there's a more diverse population, and with that, there is more, excuse me, homeless
Mm-hmm. You okay?
and other factors. Yes, I just dropped the phone. And other factors that may prohibit the city and possibly the state from opening up early as opposed to other cities and states. So I think that was a smart thing to say, because we're not all the same when it comes to the population, but also there's other factors involved in terms of when we can or cannot open the city or the state.
Hey, so let me show you something. If I look at, to come back to the NFL, what's the latest you heard about SoFi Stadium? The reason I ask is because, first of all, let me pull up this and add this to stream. This is, we're talking about price controls. This is the econ law, Galbraith's imposition of price controls, to finish that part of the conversation, where, yeah, as you can see, uh, David Henderson writes that in 1941, Leon Henderson, no relation to him, head of the Office of Price Administration, chose John Kenneth Galbraith as his economist to control prices. This was a few months before the U.S. government officially entered World War II. Galbraith learned very quickly that controlling prices in a complex economy is complex. In John Kenneth Galbraith's Life in Politics, His Economics, Richard Parker quotes from Galbraith's autobiography, A Life in Our Times, which I have, by the way. I read Life in Our Times 7 times. On my first Sunday in office, I went to the Blaine Mansion and sat down by myself with the census classification of American industry. From this, I derived the subdivisions of my office: non-ferrous metals, fuel, steel and iron and steel products, textiles, leather and apparel, and so forth. It seemed almost too simple. And then Parker writes, he says, it was too simple. As the complexity of their tasks and the requisite bureaucracy grew, so did the intricacies of the divisions. Soon under textiles and apparel came clothing, under clothing and everything else. It's basically the value chain of anything, right? Um, and he said that then came the Japanese government's attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7th of 1941. Galbraith took action. Parker writes, but Galbraith felt no panic on December 8th. Reaching his office shortly before dawn, he quickly and practically plotted out the most urgent tasks he faced. Listen to this. Listen to this, Joseph, okay? When the regional community exchanges opened up in a few hours, prices would start spiraling upward almost immediately. So he arranged for cables to be sent to the exchanges, most important the one in Chicago, to place limits on the daily increases in wheat, soybeans, butter, eggs, and other products. He then ordered aides to wire or call executives at major companies and place limits on the prices of dozens of other products that would face immediate speculative pressures. His obviously necessary actions nonetheless brought Howells from Congress within hours of its voting for war that afternoon. And he said, all right, so my point is that regardless of how you feel about price controls or anything, this is economic planning at work, 101. Economic planning 101. Galbraith had a plan. And so what happened when the blank hit the fan? He didn't panic. He went to work unfolding his plan. And so that's where we should be. Instead, I feel there's a panic. Juan Ramirez feels there's a panic because we talk about the second wave of the virus. And he says it's terrifying for the fact that people will struggle with severe PTSD symptoms due to loss of jobs, death, restrictions of freedom. If we were planning, we would not at all put our country in a situation where psychologically a number of our population would be under that kind of stress. That is symptomatic of bad planning, which really arguably is no planning at all. You see how far we've come? At the time we're supposed to be most economically and technically advanced, we've actually regressed in terms of our thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think as society we become too dependent on technology, on AI, and that's going to be the downfall of us as a civilization. Earlier on, you brought the fact that Trump should take heed, and we should all help him to realize what's going on. Unfortunately, that's not happening. But he wants to be, he likes sound bites. He wants to purport himself to be this great leader or general. He wants to be known as the wartime president. So if he had any gumption or he had an administrative staff behind him that looked through history, what are the successful administrators during wartime have done, he would do exactly what you're preaching now. He would find a way to utilize this as an opportunity, like you said, for just in the simple reasons, price control on essential goods and services. I mean, step up. And that's not happening.
No, not at all. Not at all. We're just letting it. It's like, oh, the market. We are the market. We have SoFi Stadium tickets. I want to show you this that I happened to find. I thought was an interesting something to add because you would say, hey, what are tickets going to be like? Are the Rams mentioned? Yada, 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 right? Well, yeah, take a look at this. In this whole discussion regarding, tickets and so on. And this, there we go. Okay, there we go. All right. Right here, SoFi Stadium tickets allow. And there we are. There's no mention on this page of the NFL. All right. There's not anything to say coming March 7th to be determined, right? Nothing. Mm-hmm. That's alarming. I can't remember a time in the past where I went to StubHub and saw no mention of NFL games as far early as February before the season started. But look at this. This is 5 events under SoFi. August 1st, Kenny Chesney. Guns N' Roses in the 8th. Even these are up in the air. Tim McGraw on the 4th. Motley Crue, September 5th.
Hey, you mentioned Motley Crue real quick. I believe Motley Crue decided to pull out from their tour. Right. So that's funny that's still on there.
Right. And I'm glad you mentioned that because let's type Allegiant Stadium, all right? Allegiant Stadium. The great place of the Las Vegas Raiders. We just have Garth Brooks. That's it. That's it. and I believe that is sold out. There's only one ticket left at the lowest price.
And what month was this concert again? In August?
August 22nd. And to which I say sold out. And to which I say, big fan of Garth Brooks. Awesome. That holds. But no listing of, look at this. Not only is there no listing of the NFL, there's no listing for UNLV either. Okay? You notice that?
So let's say the NFL knows, behind the scenes that they're not going to play a season. Why keep up the facade or the charade?
Politics, sponsors, television.
Yeah.
I can hypothesize. A hypothesis is an educated guess based on study. That there are some owners who would be just fine with waiting until 2021. But then there are the types like Jerry Jones who would say, along with President Trump and along with Bob Kraft, we need, and I do agree with this, we need to get our standard of living back, or we need to keep it going. I don't think that they're saying standard of living. I am. Because this is a bigger issue for me than just the maintenance of the NFL. The NFL will do fine even if it didn't have a season. But this is an issue for me of proving that we can recover what we had. Because my fear is that we have become so anti-intellectual, so disinterested in planning from 1941 till now, that we may very well not be able to cognitively recover. I don't have any confidence that the Democratic Party can do it. I'm a Democrat, all right? So I'm just laying out where I'm coming from. I think it's vitally important, and that's why I said the league should do this with Gavin, with blue state and red state governors in the room, giving a show of force that they're going to use this as a linchpin example that they are restoring the American economy.
Yeah, come together unilaterally and come with a one statement that they all endorse.
Yeah, because the other question would be, okay, so where is going to be the NFL kickoff? Is that going to happen?
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff out here that is not seen. Well, Joseph, that was great. We talked for an hour and 17 minutes.
Yeah, me a little less, but
it's okay. But folks, we'll be back tomorrow. It's 1:13 out here in the East, and I will just say, you know what? Whichever side of the stripe you're on, make sure that you show your best behavior toward each other. And to the NFL, I say this, and I said this before, and I'll say it again. If you don't have the expertise to properly plan the NFL with respect to governors and their plans and local officials and local public organizations, let me take charge because I can do it. And I'm deadly serious about that. All right. Hey, stick around, Joseph. All right, Sarah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Okay.